Ilara adjusted the cuff of her velvet sleeve, her fingers trembling slightly despite the composure she tried to show. The grand hall of the capital's royal palace glittered under dozens of crystal chandeliers, each flame dancing like captured stars. Nobles from across the kingdom mingled, their polished boots clicking against the marble floors, their laughter carefully measured, masking whispers of secrets and schemes. Yet, despite the grandeur, Ilara's mind could not settle. She stole a glance at Kalen, her mate, standing near the high table, his tall frame commanding attention even in a crowd filled with kings, queens, and alphas of lesser houses. His dark hair fell in loose waves over his shoulders, and the subtle lines of tension around his eyes betrayed that he, too, felt the unease that had followed them since the morning. Kalen was strong, confident, and fearless, a protector by nature, but tonight, even he seemed uneasy. Ilara's eyes swept the hall, scanning faces for threats she did not fully understand. Her gaze stopped on a figure seated at a table across the room, a man she recognized instantly, though her chest tightened with a mix of anger, fear, and a strange, undeniable pull. Draven. The rogue alpha, exiled years ago for acts whispered in horror. His name had become legend, dark and untouchable. And yet here he sat, calm, composed, and watching her with those piercing eyes that seemed to look straight into her soul. She quickly turned away, pretending to adjust her necklace. But the awareness of his presence sent a shiver down her spine. Kalen noticed her glance, his brow furrowing slightly. "Ilara?" he asked quietly, stepping closer. The noise of the hall seemed to fade around them. "Nothing," she said, forcing a smile. "Just... the crowd is heavier tonight." Kalen studied her for a moment longer, his eyes searching, but he nodded. "Stay close," he murmured, and pressed a protective hand to the small of her back. The simple gesture should have reassured her. And for a moment, it did, but the shadow across the room did not leave her mind. Draven leaned back in his chair, his movements slow, deliberate. No one else seemed to notice him. Or perhaps they dared not. Ilara could feel his gaze, like a cold wind brushing against her skin, reminding her of memories she had tried to bury. Memories of nights spent in danger, of choices that had cost her dearly, and of a bond she had sworn she would never feel again. The banquet proceeded, with platters of roasted game and exotic fruits carried by attendants, and the royal orchestra filling the hall with music that was at once elegant and haunting. Conversations buzzed, alliances were whispered, and subtle threats floated like poison in the air. Yet Ilara's focus was divided, torn between the man she loved and the man who had haunted her past. Kalen raised a goblet to toast the visiting lords, his strong voice carrying easily. "To peace in our lands, and to the courage that keeps it." Applause followed, polite but measured. Ilara's hand found his briefly, and she squeezed it, finding comfort in the warmth. Still, the feeling of being watched did not leave her. As the evening wore on, Draven's presence became more insistent. She caught glimpses of him from across the room, his attention unwavering, his posture relaxed but alert. It was not just curiosity or malice in his eyes, it was a challenge, a claim unspoken. Every time she met his gaze, a pulse of memory and longing surged through her. She had once trusted him completely, had believed in him when no one else would, and he had left, leaving betrayal in his wake. "Who is he?" Kalen asked quietly, leaning close to her ear. His tone was calm, but carried a quiet edge of suspicion. Ilara's stomach tightened. "No one," she said quickly, shaking her head. "An old acquaintance, nothing more." Kalen didn't push further, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He had known her for years, knew when she held back the truth, and he would find it out soon enough. The final course was served. A delicate pastry dusted with enchanted sugar that shimmered like frost. Ilara tried to focus on the sweetness, but the tension in the room had grown heavier. Nobles were speaking in hushed tones, glancing around as if the air itself held secrets. And then came the message, a small, sealed note, delivered by a trembling page. Ilara's fingers closed around it instinctively. And when she broke the seal, her eyes widened in shock. A dagger, a small, curved blade wrapped in black silk, with an unmistakable emblem etched along its hilt, the mark of Draven. Her heart raced. She clutched it tightly, trying to mask her fear, and looked to Kaelin. "Someone wants you dead," she whispered. Voice trembling despite her best efforts, Kaelin's face hardened. "Here? Now?" His eyes scanned the room, alert, protective, but he did not see Draven. Draven had already melted back into the shadows, unassuming, yet omnipresent. "Show me," he demanded, his hand gripping hers with iron strength. Alara revealed the dagger carefully. Kaelin's eyes traced the emblem, recognition flashing. "Draven," he muttered, low, his voice almost a growl. "He's back." The hall seemed to close in around them. Every noble's laugh now sounded hollow, every clink of a goblet like a warning. Alara's mind spun. Why now? Why here? And most importantly, what did Draven want after all these years? Before she could answer, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. Pages shouted, chairs toppled, and a man fell, clutching his arm as a shadow darted past. The crowd gasped and chaos erupted, but Kaelin's focus never wavered from her. He pulled her close, shielding her instinctively, his eyes blazing with fury and concern. Alara's pulse pounded in her ears. Draven's presence was not just a threat. It was a reminder of everything unresolved between them. She had thought her past with him was buried, that she had chosen safety, love, and loyalty. But the past had returned, sharp and dangerous, refusing to be ignored. Kaelin's voice was steady but tight with emotion. "Stay behind me," he said. His hand rested over hers, firm and grounding. "No one touches you." She nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because he was her anchor, her protector, her mate. Dread because she knew this night was far from over. And somewhere, in the depths of the hall, Draven's eyes lingered on her again. Unblinking, unreadable. A storm waiting to be unleashed. As the banquet ended, they moved toward the exit, every step cautious. Alara's mind raced with possibilities, strategies, and fear. She knew that Draven's return meant the past would collide violently with the present. Secrets long hidden would surface, and choices she had thought final would now demand reconsideration. Outside, the cold night air bit at their skin, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the palace. Kaelin's hand remained on hers, a silent promise that he would protect her. Whatever came, but Alara's thoughts lingered on the dagger, the emblem, and the shadowed figure watching her. "Kaelin," she whispered, almost to herself. Kaelin's eyes were dark, determined. "Then we face it. Together." Alara's heart tightened. She wanted to believe that. She had to. But somewhere deep inside, a whisper of fear trembled. Draven's return would not just threaten Kaelin's life. It would test her heart, her loyalty, and the fragile trust between them in ways she could not yet imagine. As they walked toward their carriage, unaware of the figure slipping silently into the alley across the street, Alara felt a chill, not from the night air. Draven was close, closer than they suspected, and the game had already begun. And as the city slept, a shadow moved, silent and patient, a smile playing on cold lips. Someone wanted Kaelin dead. Someone had plans that reached far beyond simple vengeance. And that someone Draven was waiting, watching, and preparing to claim what he believed was owed to him. Alara gripped Kaelin's arm, leaning slightly against him. I can't let him win," she said softly. Her voice almost lost in the wind. Kaelin's jaw tightened. "He won't," he promised. But even as he said it, neither of them knew just how deadly, how close, and how personal the threat had already become. In the shadows, a figure seated at the next table, silent, patient, and dangerous, smiled faintly, as if the night itself bent to his will. The game had begun, and no one, not even the strongest alpha in the kingdom, would escape unscathed. The night outside the fortress was silent, but inside, Tension hung in the air like a heavy fog. Elara and Kaelin had returned from the banquet, their carriage rattling over cobblestones as the city's lights blurred past. Kaelin's hand had never left hers, his grip firm, protective, and yet she could feel the weight of the threat pressing on them from every shadow. Inside the fortress, servants moved quietly, their footsteps soft against the stone floors. Guards patrolled the corridors, alert and tense, their hands never far from their weapons. Kaelin had ordered them to double their watch. But even with such precautions, Elara felt exposed. She had never feared for Kaelin's life before. Not like this. Not with Draven back. Kaelin shut the doors behind them with a heavy thud, turning to face her. "We need to be ready," he said, his voice low but commanding. "I don't care who he is or what his past is. If he tries anything, I will stop him. No one threatens my mate." Elara nodded. But her mind raced. She wanted to tell him everything about Draven. Their past. The memories she had tried to bury, but the words stuck in her throat. She feared his reaction. Not because Kaelin lacked trust, but because he did not yet know the full scope of what Draven represented. He only knew him as a rogue, dangerous, and unpredictable, but Draven had been more than that. He had once been everything to her. Kaelin studied her closely, as if reading the storm behind her eyes. "Elara, if there's something you're not telling me." His voice trailed. Softer now, tinged with worry. She swallowed hard. "There's history," she admitted finally. "With him. But it's the past. You don't need to worry about it." Kaelin's jaw tightened, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "I don't care about history. I care about now. And right now, he's a threat to you and to us. That's what matters." Elara's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that together they could face whatever Draven had planned. And yet, deep inside, she felt a pull she could not explain, a memory of firelight, whispered words, and a promise that had been broken. Draven's eyes in the banquet had reminded her of everything she had tried to forget, and perhaps everything she had never truly let go. The next morning, the fortress stirred with life, though the tension had not eased. Kaelin moved through the halls like a shadow, alert to every sound, every flicker of movement. He reviewed the plans for the kingdom's defense, spoke with his council, and yet always returned to Elara's side, as if her presence grounded him in the storm. Elara, meanwhile, found herself wandering the outer walls, looking over the city below. The sun had barely risen, and the streets glimmered with frost. Her thoughts were heavy. She knew Draven was not acting alone. His exile had left enemies, and enemies never forgot. Whoever he was allied with could strike at any time. The dagger had been a warning, but the question that burned in her heart was more personal. Why had he returned? As if in answer, a shadow moved across the wall below her. She spun, heart hammering, and there he was, Draven, standing in the morning mist, his coat brushing the frost. For a moment, time seemed to slow. He looked at her, expression unreadable, and then disappeared, as if the mist itself had swallowed him. Kaelin approached silently from behind. "You saw him," he said, voice low. Elara nodded. "He's close. Too close. And he's watching me." Kaelin's hand went to the hilt of his sword. "I warned him. No one threatens you. No one." She placed a hand on his arm, feeling the warmth beneath his armor. "It's not that simple. He's not just a threat. He's complicated. And the moment he shows up, I feel things I shouldn't feel. Things I thought were buried." Kaelin's dark eyes softened, but his resolve did not waver. "Then, you let me fight the threat. You let me protect you. That's my role, Elara. You don't have to carry this alone." Elara nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. She had always been strong, independent. But Draven's return had changed the rules. She could feel it in her bones, the past colliding with the present. and no shield could stop it completely. The day passed slowly, filled with quiet training sessions, council meetings, and guarded conversations. But as evening fell, a new tension gripped the fortress. A message arrived, delivered by a rider who had traveled through the dark forests surrounding the city. Kaelin read it quickly, eyes narrowing as he handed it to Ilara. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the parchment. The words were simple, but the meaning was deadly clear. I am closer than you think. The past will claim what it was owed. Watch carefully. Her pulse quickened. Kaelin saw her face and said nothing, simply placing a protective hand on hers again. The fortress, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage with invisible threats pressing against the walls. Night fell fully, and the candles flickered in the great hall. Ilara could not sleep. She walked to the window, looking out at the shadowed streets below. The city slept, unaware of the storm gathering above them, and then she saw him again, Draven, moving like a phantom through the alleyways. He stopped, looked up at her window, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a challenge, a memory. Her heart ached with confusion and longing, and she turned away before Kaelin could see. The next day brought an urgent council meeting. Kaelin and his advisors discussed security, allies, and the possible motives behind Draven's return. Every possibility was considered. Revenge, political gain, or perhaps a test of loyalty. But Kaelin could not shake the feeling that this was personal, more than any normal threat. Ilara listened, silent, weighing the words. She knew part of her had to face the truth. Draven had once meant something to her, and that bond had not entirely faded. But she also knew that Kaelin, loyal and steadfast, was the anchor of her present. She could not betray that, no matter the pull of the past. Later, she trained with Kaelin in the courtyard, sword clashing against sword, sparks flying with each strike. The physical exertion cleared her mind somewhat, but even in the rhythm of combat, she felt Draven's presence like a ghost. Kaelin noticed her distraction, his strikes becoming sharper, his tone more insistent. Ilara, focus. He barked. Not in anger, but in concern. If you let him occupy your thoughts, you're vulnerable. And I cannot protect you if you are not fully here with me. She nodded, forcing herself to concentrate. Their swords met again, and she felt the steadying rhythm of their bond. Kaelin was her mate, her protector, and in this moment, she reminded herself of that truth. Yet even as she fought, she could not escape the pull of Draven's shadow, moving in the corners of her mind, reminding her that history never truly stayed buried. As night fell, a messenger arrived once more, this time with a different tone. The seal on the parchment was broken and smeared with soot. Ilara's hands shook as she read the note. I see you. I know where you are. The choice is coming soon. Be ready. Kaelin's eyes darkened. He's taunting us, he said, voice low and dangerous. He wants fear. He wants control. He won't get it. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. It's not just fear, she whispered. It's something else. Something personal. He's here for me. Kaelin, I can feel it. Kaelin pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Then we face it together. Whatever he brings, we are stronger together. But deep inside, Ilara knew the truth. Draven's return would not just test their strength, it would test their hearts, their loyalty, and their choices. And soon, the past and the present would collide in ways none of them could predict. That night, as the fortress slept, Ilara lay awake, listening to the wind whisper through the battlements. Somewhere, beyond the walls, Draven moved. Watching, waiting, and the storm that had begun at the banquet was only growing stronger. Ilara closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. She could feel the tension building, the danger creeping closer with every heartbeat, and somewhere deep in her soul, she knew that the coming days would demand courage, sacrifice, and a clarity she was not yet ready to find. Yet despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, one thought remained. Kaelin would fight for her, protect her, and stand by her side. And no matter how dark the path became, she would face it. Because the stakes were no longer just about survival, they were about love, loyalty, and a past that refused to stay buried. Outside, the night held its breath. And in the shadows, the rogue alpha waited, patient, silent, and dangerous. The game had moved beyond threats and warnings. Now, it was a test of hearts, of choices, and of a storm that was about to break. The following days in the fortress were tense and uneasy. Elara moved through the halls like a shadow, careful not to draw attention, yet aware that her thoughts betrayed her every step. Kaelin remained vigilant, never far from her side, his eyes sharp and body tense, ready to strike at the first sign of danger. Despite the fortress's walls and guards, the sense of threat never left them. Draven had returned, and his presence hung like a storm cloud over everything. Elara spent hours in the library, poring over maps, old battle records, and letters from exiled alphas. She was searching for patterns, clues, anything that might reveal Draven's intent. He was no ordinary enemy. His intelligence and skill had earned him his place among legends, and his return could not be random. Kaelin joined her often, leaning over maps, tracing possible approaches for defense. But Elara could see the worry etched into his features. He trusted her, believed in her strength, yet he knew that Draven's arrival was not simply about politics or conquest. There was a personal element, a dangerous intimacy that neither of them could ignore. One evening, as the sun sank low behind the fortress towers, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Elara noticed movement in the outer gardens. She stepped closer to the balcony, her pulse quickening. Through the mist and fading light, she saw him, Draven. His figure was tall, his stance relaxed, yet commanding. He did not approach the walls or attempt an attack. He merely watched, as if testing her, gauging her reaction. Kaelin appeared behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You see him," he said quietly. Not a question, but a statement. Elara nodded. "He's watching. He's waiting." Kaelin's jaw tightened. "Then we prepare. No matter what game he plays, we will not falter." Elara turned to him, the weight of her emotions pressing down. "Kaelin, he's not just here to threaten us. He knows me. He knows things about me. About my past. I can feel it." Kaelin's eyes darkened, but he did not speak. He simply held her gaze, letting her know that he understood without needing words. Their bond was tested in ways they could not fully express, yet both knew the other would remain steadfast, no matter the coming trials. That night, the fortress was restless. Elara could not sleep, her mind filled with memories of Draven, of nights where trust had been everything, and betrayal had been pain. She remembered the firelight flickering across his face, the promises whispered and broken, the storm of emotions she had fought to bury. She did not notice when Kaelin entered her chamber, silent as a shadow. He stood at the door, watching her for a long moment. "Elara," he said softly, his voice carrying both warmth and urgency. She turned to him, startled, but not afraid. "Kaelin, I can't stop thinking about him, and I don't know why." Kaelin took a careful step forward, closing the distance. "You don't have to explain your thoughts to me, but I need you here. Now. With me. That's all that matters." Elara nodded, yet the unease remained. She wanted to believe that their bond could withstand anything. Yet Draven's return was not simply about power. It was about something far more personal, far more complicated, and she feared that the choices she would have to make in the coming days could tear everything apart. The following morning brought news that made her heart skip. A series of attacks had been reported along the northern roads, subtle yet precise, designed to destabilize the kingdom's defenses. Kaelin gathered his advisors and guards, preparing for a confrontation. Elara joined him, determined to help, though she could feel the tension between them growing. Draven's presence was no longer hidden. Rumors spread quickly through the fortress and the city below. Tales of a rogue alpha moving silently, striking swiftly, and disappearing before he could be caught. And yet, he did not openly attack the fortress. His goal was not simple destruction. It was a test, a challenge, a message aimed directly at Alara and Kaelin. Late in the afternoon, Alara found herself alone in the training courtyard, practicing her sword work. Her movements were precise, her focus intense, yet her mind wandered to Draven's eyes. The way he had looked at her in the banquet, in the mist, in the shadows. There was a pull, a tension that she could not ignore, a memory she had tried to bury for years. Kaelin entered silently, watching her for a moment before speaking. Your focus wavers. Alara paused, breathing hard. It's hard not to think about him. Kaelin's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. Then let me carry that burden. Focus on the present. On us. That is where your strength lies. Before she could respond, a sudden shout echoed through the courtyard. Guards rushed in, weapons drawn. An intruder, one cried. Alara and Kaelin moved immediately, swords drawn, hearts pounding. Shadows shifted at the edge of the courtyard, and then Draven stepped into view, his presence commanding, dangerous, yet calm. His gaze met Alara's, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Alara, he said, voice low, carrying the weight of past memories. It has been a long time. Kaelin stepped forward, positioning himself between them. Stay back, Draven. This ends here. Draven's eyes flicked to Kaelin, then back to Alara. I am not here to fight him. Not yet. But the truth must be faced. Alara's heart raced. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice trembling despite her resolve. Draven's expression was unreadable. To make you see, he said quietly. To make you understand that the past is not finished. And choices you made were never as simple as you believed. Kaelin's grip on his sword tightened. Whatever games you play, this ends tonight. Step away. Draven shook his head slightly. I play no games. I merely offer the truth. Alara's chest ached with conflicting emotions. She wanted to trust Kaelin, to rely on the bond they shared. Yet Draven's words stirred something within her. A memory of firelight and promises. Of trust and betrayal. Of moments she could not forget. Suddenly, a distant explosion rocked the northern gate. Guards shouted, and the fortress was thrown into chaos. Kaelin's attention snapped to the threat. But Alara's eyes remained on Draven. He had vanished, leaving only the echo of his presence. A reminder that danger and desire were intertwined in ways she could not yet navigate. Kaelin turned to her, concern sharp in his eyes. Alara, are you hurt? She shook her head, though her body trembled. No. I'm fine. But he's here. And he knows me. More than I want him to. Kaelin pulled her close, his hand firm on her back. We will face this together, I swear it. The rest of the evening was tense. The fortress fortified itself against attack. Patrols doubled, and every shadow was treated with suspicion. Alara and Kaelin moved together through the halls, side by side, a united front against an enemy who understood them both too well. Yet, despite the preparation, Alara could not shake the pull of the past. Draven's presence was not just a threat, it was a challenge to her heart, a test of loyalty, and a mirror reflecting the choices she had made and the desires she had suppressed. She feared that the coming confrontation would not just decide their survival, but the very nature of her heart and bond with Kaelin. As night fell fully, the moonlight casting silver across the fortress walls, Alara found herself alone once more. Standing at the balcony, her thoughts drifted to Draven, to the way he had watched her, to the words he had spoken. She knew that the coming days would demand courage, sacrifice, and clarity she was not yet ready to find. And then she saw him again. A shadow moving at the edge of the courtyard. Silent. Patient. Watching. Waiting. The storm was approaching, and she could feel it in her bones, the collision of past and present, desire and loyalty, danger and protection. Alara's chest tightened, and she whispered into the night, almost to herself, Kaelin, we will survive this. We must. But even as she spoke, she knew that survival alone would not be enough. Choices would be demanded, truths revealed, and hearts tested. The rogue Alpha's return had set events into motion that could not be stopped, and soon, the fortress, the kingdom, and her own heart would face the ultimate trial. In the shadows, a figure moved silently, every step deliberate, every breath measured. Draven had come not just to threaten, but to awaken what had been buried, and the question remained. When the storm fully broke, whose heart would claim victory, and at what cost? Alara turned back toward the fortress, gripping the balcony railing. She knew the answer would not be simple. She knew that the path forward was dangerous. But one thing was certain: the next confrontation would change everything. And somewhere in the shadows, Draven's eyes glimmered with resolve. Patient, silent, and dangerous. The past had returned, and it would not leave until it had taken what it believed was owed. The fortress was silent that night, but the air was thick with anticipation. Alara could feel it in every stone of the walls, every shadow stretching across the courtyards. The rogue Alpha had returned, and his presence had changed everything. Kaelin moved through the halls with precise control, sword at his side, eyes alert, every step measured. But Alara could see the strain in him. Protecting her was instinct, but he also understood that this threat was unlike any other. They were dealing with someone who knew them both intimately. Alara stood at the balcony, the cold wind tugging at her cloak. Below, the courtyard was quiet, yet she could feel movement in the shadows. Draven had come closer than ever before. Testing, watching, waiting. She had to confront the truth she had been avoiding. Her past with him, and the emotions that refused to remain buried. Kaelin joined her, his presence solid and grounding. Alara, he said softly, whatever happens tonight, we face it together. No hesitation, no fear. She nodded, feeling the warmth of his hand on hers. I know, she said. But it's not just fear. It's him. Draven. He's personal. This isn't only about power. Kaelin's eyes darkened, but he did not falter. Then we stay close. Every step, every move. We are stronger together. Night had fully fallen, and the moon cast silver light over the fortress. The air was tense, each shadow seeming to move with its own life. And then, a soft sound from the courtyard drew their attention. Alara's pulse quickened. She knew the presence before she saw it. Draven stepped into the moonlight, calm, composed, and dangerous as ever. Alara, he said, his voice carrying softly across the courtyard. We must speak. Alone. Kaelin stepped forward immediately, his hand on the hilt of his sword. No, he said firmly. You will not come near her. Not now. Not ever. Draven's eyes flicked to Kaelin, a hint of a smile on his lips. I do not wish to fight him. Not yet. But the truth cannot wait. She must understand. Alara's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to run, to push away. But something deep inside her stirred. The memories of firelight, whispered promises, and moments of trust and betrayal pressed forward, demanding acknowledgement. She took a step forward. Let's speak. But not here. Not where others can see. Draven nodded slightly, and she followed him to the shadowed gardens beyond the fortress walls. Kaelin remained close, watching every movement, his protective instincts heightened. In the gardens, the moonlight painted long shadows across the stone paths. Draven stopped and turned to face her fully. His eyes, dark and intense, held her gaze. Alara, I never stopped thinking of you. I never stopped caring. The past. I know I hurt you, and I cannot change that. But the threat against you, against Kaelin, it brought me back. I could not ignore it. Alara's heart raced. She wanted to push him away, wanted to focus on Kaelin, but the truth in Draven's words echoed inside her. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Everything. It's too much. Draven's voice softened. You don't need to say anything. You only need to see the truth. The danger is real, and my return was not just for myself. The enemies we face, they are stronger than anyone imagined, and they will not stop until they destroy everything you care about. Kaelin's presence behind her was steady, reassuring. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. Elara, I am here. You do not face this alone. The three of them stood in the moonlit garden, tension thick, the air charged with unspoken emotions and impending conflict. The quiet was shattered by a sudden scream from the northern gate. Guards shouted, alarms rang, and shadows moved like living creatures. The enemy had struck. Kaelin's instincts took over immediately. Elara, stay here, he shouted, drawing his sword. Draven, stand back or be ready. Draven moved with surprising swiftness, positioning himself beside Kaelin. I am not here to fight him, he said, but to protect you both. Together, we can stop this. Elara's chest tightened. The strange alliance, fragile and uncertain, was their only chance. The enemy's dark forces that had conspired to destabilize the kingdom had underestimated the unity between them, and yet, she could not ignore the swirling emotions inside her, the pull of the past, the loyalty to Kaelin, and the unresolved bond with Draven. The battle began suddenly. Shadows surged. Figures cloaked in dark armor charging the gates. Weapons glinting under the moonlight. Kaelin's sword moved with deadly precision. Each strike calculated. Draven was beside him, moving like a shadow, striking enemies with controlled, lethal skill. Elara, despite fear and uncertainty, fought as well. Every movement, every slash, was a declaration. She would not yield. The fight was fierce, yet strangely synchronized. Kaelin and Draven moved with a rhythm born of instinct, anticipation, and an unspoken understanding. And through it all, Elara felt a strange sense of clarity. The storm within her, the conflict of loyalty and desire, had a purpose now. She was fighting not just for survival, but for love, trust, and redemption. Finally, the last of the attackers fell. Retreating into the shadows from which they had come, the courtyard was littered with the aftermath, armor dented, weapons scattered, and the heavy scent of exertion in the air. Elara sank to her knees, breathing hard, her heart still racing from the battle. Kaelin knelt beside her, his hand steady on her back. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Concern sharp in his voice, she shook her head, though exhaustion threatened to pull her down. "No. I'm fine. We did it." Draven stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "It is not over," he said softly. "The enemies may have retreated, but the threat remains. You are strong, both of you. But strength alone will not save the kingdom. Choices must be made. And hearts must be honest." Elara looked at him, then at Kaelin. Her chest tightened, emotions swirling like a storm. She realized the truth. Loyalty, love, and courage were all tested tonight, and she knew that the bond with Kaelin, her mate, had been strengthened by the trials, yet her past with Draven had not been erased. It lingered, a shadow in the corners of her heart. Kaelin took her hand gently. "Elara, whatever you feel, whatever challenges we face, I will stand by you. Not because I demand it, but because I choose it. Every day, I choose you." Tears threatened her eyes. The clarity she had sought was finally there. The past could not be undone, but the present and future were theirs to shape. She looked at Draven one last time. "You've returned, and I understand why," she said softly. "But my heart, my choice, it belongs to Kaelin." Draven nodded slowly, the faintest smile appearing. "Then I will honor that. I came back not to claim you, but to protect what was always yours, to give you the chance to be free of fear and danger. I will leave it to fate, and to the bond between you and him. Kaelin pulled her close, embracing her with the strength of someone who had fought and survived countless battles. "You are mine," he whispered. "Not by force, but by choice." Elara rested her head against his chest, breathing in the calm after the storm. The fortress was safe, the enemy repelled, and the bond between them stronger than ever. Yet she knew the world outside would always hold shadows, threats, and trials. But now, she had clarity, courage, and love guiding her. As dawn approached, the first light of day painted the sky with gold and rose. The fortress, though scarred from battle, stood tall and resolute. Elara, Kaelin, and even Draven, though their paths would now diverge, understood the truth. The past shapes us, but the choices we make define our future. Elara looked to Kaelin, her mate, her protector, her love. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he echoed, eyes bright with determination and devotion. And somewhere in the shadows, beyond the fortress walls, Draven watched briefly before vanishing, leaving behind only the lesson that even the darkest pasts could be reconciled with courage, truth, and honor. The storm had passed, but the world remained a place of mystery and challenge, yet one where love, loyalty, and redemption could prevail. For Elara, Kaelin, and even Draven, life continued, tempered by trials, strengthened by choices, and guided by hearts brave enough to face the shadows.